What is going on, all my non-movie buffs? Welcome to the very first episode of Not a Movie Buff. If you press play, you are here from day one. No backlog, no hype train, just me, microphone, and you. Now, I've been thinking about doing a podcast for a while. I used to have a blog called Not a Movie Buff. It's definitely not because I need to get into the hobby. Believe me, I've got plenty. I'm a gamer, first and foremost, but I love to talk about movies. And a lot of times, when I'm talking about them with people, it turns into a real conversation. We don't have debates. It's not always a review. I save that for my blog, not when I'm talking to people. We just talk. So, I'll go ahead and record the talk. You see, I'm a 90s kid, born in 95. But the more I grow, the older I get, the more that I realize that movies, they're really a timeline of my life. I don't remember the year of movies by what grade I was in. I don't remember what was playing at the time. But I can tell you when I was in kindergarten, Toy Story was, it was it. Toy Story was the stuff. Growing up in elementary school, Saturday morning, I loved watching Space Jam. I was here for that all the time. The Matrix trilogy, that was the thing when I was in middle school, and everyone loved trying to do kung fu. But you can really mark time on calendars. You can mark them with movies. That really tells you where you are in life and where you are in time, the movie that you're watching. Really, this show is me just putting my love for talking about movies out loud. It's me saying that I don't need a degree in film studies to have an opinion. I'm not trying to prove that I'm smarter than the next guy. I just want to talk about movies and what they mean to me, and hopefully it means something to you too. So before I get too far, I want to say up front, I'm not a professional critic. Like I said, I had a blog. I wrote reviews on that blog. That was just me giving my opinion. I don't do it professionally. Professional critics, they have their opinion. They do technical jargon. I'm not with that. I'm just a guy who grew up watching movies on VHS tapes, and 20 some odd years later, I am streaming 4K movies on my phone. So I'm part of that bridge generation. The one that remembers rental tapes, and I also remember buffering. And that makes for some really interesting perspective. But really, it's all about timing. I'm working full time. I'm married. So trying to build something creative, the hardest part about that is starting. But I hit a point where I realized that waiting for the perfect moment, it was just another excuse. So I got my mic out. I cleared a corner of my space, and I'm like, okay, let's do this. I'm recording this the same way I talk to my boys about movies, but this is where all of the good stuff comes out. You say what everyone's thinking, but no one's saying. Like, yeah, Fast X, that was ridiculous, but I'd still watch another one. Exactly that. And I started this podcast because conversations about films lately, they've turned into arguments. You can't just say, that was dope anymore. And I'm be honest, if you do, get with the times. We don't talk like that anymore. But someone's always ready with a think piece about plot holes and CGI budgets. And I'm really like, it's just a movie. You're just meant to enjoy the movie. That's all it's supposed to be. I remember one time I posted that I enjoyed Avengers Age of Ultron. That's my favorite Avengers movie. And I never said it was a masterpiece. I don't believe it's as bad as everyone makes it seem. You could have sworn I committed a crime in the comment section. That honestly is probably the moment that I realized people aren't watching movies to enjoy them. They're just really watching movies to win discussions. That's not what I'm about. This show is me reclaiming the simple joy of the freedom to just like something. Now, growing up, liking movies was simple. I saw something cool on the screen. I went and told my friends about it. And you had some people that when they saw something cool on the theaters, they went and they tried to do the stunt. I had a friend, he had a trampoline, and he would go and just try to do the craziest flips that he saw from the Matrix. And I'm surprised he didn't break his neck. Like, this boy was reckless. But for us as kids, that was the review. We didn't care about Rotten Tomatoes. We cared what the movie did to us. It made us laugh. It made us jump. It made us quote it for months. So that's what I want Not a Movie Buff to feel like. It's not an essay. It's not a hot take every time. Sometimes it will be, because I do have opinions. But I want it to be that after movie energy when you're walking out of the theater, when you are still quoting the lines and you're still hyped from the soundtrack. You're still arguing about who was right in the end. All right, so let's talk beginnings. Being born in 1995, honestly, my first memories of movies came with those big old chunky TVs, the ones that had the VCR built into it. It wasn't a separate VCR. You put the tape right into that bad boy. And Saturday mornings, we were watching movies like Power Rangers, the movie, Space Jam, The Lion King. Like, that was the golden age of bright colors and big soundtracks. The Lion King, that was the first movie that got me emotional. Like, every single time, I will admit it, Mufasa fell and Simba clawed him and was so desperate to get him up, and I bawled. Like, that, it still gets me. But that movie earned it. It wasn't like sadness for sadness sakes, just being that way. It was realization for us as kids that life changes and you can't stop it. There's nothing you can do at times. So even as a kid, like, you're learning those lessons and it hits different. So you move on, and we move to the live action adventure phase, which is Jumanji, Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Men in Black. And every movie, it felt like an event. You didn't stream it back then. You waited for it. You heard the theme song on TV and you sprinted to the couch. You better get there. You can't rewind or anything like that. Now, the soundtracks, them 90s soundtracks for the movies, undefeated. Space Jam had us all believing we could fly. Men in Black, we thought Will Smith was really saving the world in between recording them albums. It was something magical about that blend of music and movies. It made the stories feel so much bigger than the screen. And those were the years that I started realizing that movies weren't just entertainment, they were culture. Yeah, we all saw the same thing, but we also all walked away quoting different lines. That was community before social media. Now, 2000s hit, Hollywood went crazy with possibility. 2002, Spider-Man drops, and everybody and their mama was trying to swing from buildings. That upside down kiss, iconic for its time. That was the moment superhero movies stopped being for kids. It also talked to the adults, and they had interest in a broader audience for the first time. And shout out to Drumline, Coach Carter, You Got Served. All of those movies were staples in every black household I knew. We'd watch them like they were motivational speeches. Nick Cannon, he made us think we could all join a band. And Omarion, now I wasn't doing it because I just knew I didn't have that skill. But a majority of my friends, they were practicing spin moves in the mirror. Then you've got Shrek that came out around that time. And people honestly forget how much that movie changed animation. Because it wasn't cute, it was clever. It was the first cartoon I remember that felt like it was talking to both adults and kids at the same time, and it really helped to bridge the gap. And then you've got The Matrix Reloaded, I remember around that time, and it blew our minds. I will be completely honest. I didn't fully get the plot. I still don't fully get the plot. I doubt I will ever fully get the plot, but those fight scenes, unreal. Like, fire. You would leave the theater trying to dodge imaginary bullets in slow motion, and it was just a time to be alive. It was also known as the DVD era, and coming from VHSs to DVDs, game changers. You got bonus features, you got deleted scenes, you got bloopers, and we would watch all of it. And a lot of the fun was that menu screen looping with the same 12-second clip you'd memorize without even trying. And if you had that big black DVD binder in your house with the plastic sleeves, yeah, you were rich. We knew it. You had money. That era, it built my taste, and it's why I can go from Spider-Man to loving basketball without missing a beat. Different vibes, but the same love for storytelling, I promise you. Now, about the mid-2000s, I was in the teen years, and again, learning lessons, growing. Movies started feeling like mirrors. They stopped being background noise. They started speaking to me. Around that time, I remember ATL dropped. And on that movie, it made everybody want to skate again. It wasn't anything about the music. It wasn't anything about the fashion. It was the feeling of being young, being broke, and still believing that you could own the world if you caught one good break. So many people can relate to that. You'd watch T.I. glide around Cascade and think, yeah, I'm going to give me a chain and a plan. Now, again, I didn't do that. I didn't plan to do that. But then You had Coach Carter. It came through. It reminded us discipline actually matters. Samuel L. Jackson had us all repeating, "Sir, yes, sir," at home like we were about to run suicides in the kitchen. That movie hit because it wasn't pretending. It felt like something your uncle would tell you in real life. Again, around the same time, we have The Pursuit of Happiness coming out. And it's one of the most honest father-son movies that I can think of. Will Smith, he carried that entire film on the basis of pain and hope. And the lesson that comes out of it is that you can fail 1,000 times and still keep walking. Now, it didn't make me cry like The Lion King did. Not many movies do. Honestly, The Lion King is probably the only movie that's made me cry. But it definitely had me sit down and think for a second. It always is good when something can pull at your heartstrings, your emotions. And that's the difference between being a kid and a teen. That message, it starts to stick. Now, I can't talk about the 2000s without mentioning Transformers. We all remember the first time that those cars unfolded on screen, that sound. We all looked around like, what was that? And yes, Michael Bay went overboard, for sure. But the first one, it was pure spectacle. I mean, it was loud, it was shiny, it was nonsensical, and honestly, I loved every second of it. It's not my favorite Transformers movie, but it was a phenomenal one. Then you've got Iron Man dropping in 2008, and it changed the game. Now, nobody knew it yet, but that was the start of an empire. And Marvel, they built something, it carried us through the next decade. We had no idea that we were watching the start of what would become Avengers Endgame 11 years later. And in the midst of all of that, The Dark Knight came through and set a new bar. Heath Ledger as Joker, y'all, untouchable. And that movie, the amount of lines that you had people quoting, you could walk into school and somebody would whisper, "Why so serious?" And you knew exactly what they meant. See, back then you had multiple genres firing at once. You had comedy, you had superhero, you had inspirational, you had action. We had Superbad teaching us awkward friendship. There was Step Up, and that gave us choreography confidence. Now, I will admit I tried some dance moves because I got rhythm. I can do that. And then you got Friday After Next, keeping the culture alive. And we may not have realized it back then, but that era, it was teaching us tone, timing, and rhythm. And it's the way that stories land when they sound like people we know. That's what it showed us. Now, you had high school bedrooms that turned into mini blockbusters. You had so many people that had a giant zip-up case full of burned discs with Sharpie handwriting on top. Some of them said Rush Hour 2. Other ones just said Funny Movie Number 4. And you would slide one of those DVDs into the player. It's scratched up, so you don't know if it's going to work. You pray it loaded up, and if it did, you felt like you beat the system. It was like when you had a PS2 or even an old Super Nintendo. You blow on our cartridge, you put it back in, put the power button, and hope it works, and when it did, it was golden. That is exactly how it felt. Back then, we didn't have infinite streaming libraries. We had maybe a max of 15 movies, and we'd watch them over and over again. But the repetition, to me, it made it personal. You could quote "Love Don't Cost a Thing" line for line, or you could finish every word of Friday. That's what built culture, that shared language. Again, every DVD menu had that 12-second loop that drilled itself into your brain. You'd fall asleep, wake up at 2 o'clock a.m., and hear the same 10 seconds of music. That was the sound of the 2000s. Now, my college years, that early adulthood stretch, that's where movies started feeling like therapy sessions I didn't really book. Around that time, I watched Creed. That hit different. Michael B. Jordan, I felt more in tune with him. He carried that hunger like every 20-something that's trying to make a name for themselves, that's trying to figure out life. The training montage, it wasn't just for boxers. It's for anybody that's chasing something that feels impossible. Then you've got Black Panther. It dropped, and that is the Marvel movie that broke the internet. That, for us, that was more than a movie. It was a moment. We got to see a majority black cast in a blockbuster that wasn't about pain or struggle. It was about excellence and legacy, and that mattered. It made you sit a little straighter, and it reminded us representation isn't about being included. It's about being centered. And right behind that came Get Out. That movie was a cultural earthquake. It proved that something could be made that's smart, that's scary, that's funny, it's socially sharp all at once. And Jordan Peele, he basically said, yo, we can tell our stories our own way. And he forced the world to listen. That same stretch, it gave us Avengers Endgame, Fast Five, The Hunger Games, Inception. All of those were big, wild concepts that somehow reflected our real lives. So we're trying to figure out adulthood, but honestly, you can watch a Christopher Nolan movie and you could relate. It was complex, it was looping, it was slightly confusing, but when it clicks, it's beautiful. So right around 2014, 2015, that's when streaming took over. Netflix, it wasn't new. We used to go and get the DVDs, but now it was the thing. Friday nights, we didn't have to leave the house to watch something new. Convenient? Absolutely, 100%. But something got lost in the trade-off. You may remember lining up for a midnight release, buying overcooked popcorn just for the atmosphere. No more of that. It's just press play now. You don't got crowd reactions. You don't have whispers during trailers. You don't have strangers clapping when the credits hit. Honestly, I'm not complaining about that last part, but we gained access. We just lost ritual, or some people's ritual. Again, everybody wasn't for all of that. So I don't feel like we lost everything per se, but for a good majority of people, yeah, ritual was lost. Still, you had those smaller films that streaming gave a shot. Movies that probably wouldn't have ever hit theaters. It found audiences online. I found so many gems that I've never even heard of because the algorithm actually did something right. Now, sometimes you may miss the smell of popcorn. Go to Walmart, get you a bag, pop it in the popcorn, and then you'll be right back in time. And streaming, it's honestly created a new kind of memory. This could be considered the binge era. Shows and movies have become part of our routine. You have some people, they'll just say, I'll watch one episode knowing good and well you're not leaving that couch. It's really the new movie marathon. But once work and bills entered the picture, the way that I watch movies, it changed. It's not about what's out right now anymore. It's about what can I watch before bed? What can I enjoy? Because sometimes I don't care about finishing the movie. I'm just here to feel good for a couple of hours, detached from the world. My wife and I, we have comfort films that we rotate. We watch Sister Act 2, Rush Hour 2, we've seen The Dark Knight, and Encanto, that's our movie. The Greatest Showman, y'all, we love that movie. But those are movies that we watch when we want to watch something upbeat. Half the time, we're quoting lines more than we're watching. But that's how you know a movie's part of your life. It becomes background music for good vibes. Now, before streaming stole the thunder, midnight premieres, they were the moment for a lot of people. It was their version of a concert. A lot of people in the crew, they would pull up and they were half asleep, but they were hyped. They had coffee in one hand or Red Bull, for sure, Monster. They were glugging them, tickets in the other hand. Everybody wore graphic tees like they were jerseys. Marvel versus DC, Team Jacob versus Team Edward. Hogwarts House is representing in line. People will say in times like this that there was a buzz in the air that you just can't replicate at home. There's that half second when the Marvel logo flashed and the crowd screamed. Some people got goosebumps. When Avengers Endgame hit, you can't match that energy. You had people crying. You had people high-fiving strangers. You had people shouting theories mid-movie. And I'm just like, watch the movie, y'all. Why are you shouting these theories? Just watch it. We're in the middle of it. What do you have to theorize about? But for them, it wasn't just watching something. It was belonging to something. The late 2000s through the mid-2010s, it gave us so many of those moments. You've got Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, The Dark Knight Rises, Star Wars The Force Awakens. So many different fandoms, but they all had the same electricity. And even if you weren't part of it, you respected the passion. Part of me misses that because you can't pause an experience like that. It was so great to be there, feel the room react, and being able to carry that memory with you. Then Hollywood caught reboot fever. Everything had a sequel, a prequel, a live action remake, and at first it was cool, it was exciting. Yo, we got nostalgia with an HD upgrade. Seeing Jurassic World roar again, it was cool. Childhood 1.5, I really was not hyped like that for Jurassic World. Hearing that Spider-Man theme updated for a new generation, though, absolute fire. But then It got messy like it always does. You'd hear an announcement and you're like, do we really need this? Who asked for The Lion King with real lions? Yes, it looked amazing. Don't get me wrong. It was a beautiful movie, but it did not hit the same. And that's because sometimes magic isn't in graphics. It's in the imperfection that we grow up with. The animation, it had its faults, but it was still great. And it got the message across, something that these live action movies just can't do at times. But I can admit that I get why studios do it. We crave the familiar. We want that same comfort that we felt sitting cross-legged in front of a box TV 20 years ago. But honestly, can we not admit that reboots are proof that movies aren't just products? They're memories that we're trying to relive. We want to get that moment back. But the best ones, they bring something new. They don't just rely on the old. Like, let's go back to Creed. It took Rocky and it turned it into a story about legacy and identity. Spider-Man No Way Home, one of the best Marvel movies, hands down, turned nostalgia into therapy. You had closure for 3 generations of fans. And that's when reboots work, when they respect the past, but they talk to the present. Now, by the late 2010s, streaming, it wasn't just an option. Yeah, it was the thing back then, but now it's the industry. Netflix and went global. Disney Plus launched. You got Prime Video just trying to do everything. And now we have content instead of movies. And you sit there and you're trying to pick a film and you go through like just 20 minutes scrolling, like you're trying to find a new identity. Sure, the convenience is unbeatable, but you got to admit at some point that the overload is real. There's something about when you go to an actual movie theater, you're forced to focus. At home, you can be on your phone, you get one notification, you check out instantly, just like that. But the access is wonderful. I love it because I've found so many old 90s gems, international films, documentaries. It's all right there at my fingertips. Streaming gives movie lovers range. The flip side, your attention span shrinks. See, nowadays movies, they have to hook you in 10 minutes or they risk becoming background noise. That changed how stories were written, how they were paced, even how they were marketed, because now you've got trailers that are really just giving away half the plot just to keep us interested. And we didn't just evolve as viewers, we mutated. We became multitasking audiences because you're sitting there watching, you have these watch parties where you're tweeting, where you're eating, you're texting all at once. You're not really focusing solely on that film, but there is time still when the film really hits. Everything just goes quiet. And that silence in your living room when that scene lands is proof that the magic survived. Now, I want to talk about something people my age feel deeply. Video games and movies, they basically grew up together. When we were kids, movie games were side hustles. You had Spider-Man 2 on PS2, which was a fantastic game, a wonderful video game adaptation of a movie, honestly, and one of the best, actually, in my opinion, the best video game adaptation of a movie for the time. Now, you also had The Matrix, Path of Neo. Those games back in, those movie video game adaptations, they were clunky, but we didn't care. And it was fun to play as. That's really all that matters when it comes to video games, how fun it is. But now you've got storytelling in games that have leveled up. You've got The Last of Us and Uncharted, Red Dead Redemption 2 for sure. All of those games felt cinematic. They had character arcs, they had themes, and they had emotions. When The Last of Us hit HBO, it was like watching proof that games had become art. That crossover, gaming becoming film, it's a whole new era of storytelling, and I promise y'all, I'm here for it because we get to see it with Fallout, and we get to see it with the Super Mario Brothers movie, and we get to see it with Sonic the Hedgehog. As much of a Lion King fan as I am, I'm a bigger Sonic the Hedgehog fan through and through. But seeing those movies, those video game movie adaptations, any sort of adaptation, it's the same thrill that we used to get watching comic book adaptations. It may be a different medium, but it's still the same excitement of seeing what you love rendered on the big screen. It really goes both ways because if you look at it, movies have really started borrowing from games. You have level-like structure, and some of the times it feels like side quest pacing. There are movies that you can see it evident in, like John Wick and Extraction. But to me, it's like that synergy is shaping a new generation of directors who, instead of growing up with a camera in their hand, they grew up with controllers in their hands. So I'm really interested to see how that continues to grow because Video game movies are definitely becoming more and more popular. Now, the older I get, I can definitely appreciate rewatching a movie. It's like catching up with an old friend who always shows you something new. When I was younger, I would just rewatch for fun, but now I rewatch for perspective. I want to see what I see different each time. I'll put on the Black Panther, and suddenly T'Challa's speeches, they feel like advice instead of dialogue. Rewatching can keep you grounded. Life moves fast, but pressing play on a familiar movie helps you slow down for 2 hours and really just relax. It's like time travel. You go back to when you first saw it, who you were with, what you were chasing. Like, I'll never look down on someone who just has one comfort movie that they go back to and it's on repeat. You could just think of it like therapy that doesn't require insurance. Now, look, I will be the spokesperson for not everything has to be deep. Some movies exist purely for chaos and popcorn. Fast and Furious 5 through 10, the physics aren't there. Like, sometimes there are people that just want cars doing impossible things and a family barbecue at the end, and apparently those movies have shown that there is an audience for that. But then you've also got those comedies that hold up no matter how old you get. You've got Friday, Superbad, Rush Hour 2, White Chicks. Those are movies that remind you laughter is its own kind of feeling. You have some that are so bad it's good, and even they have a place. You got Snakes on a Plane. You have Sharknado. There's even Leprechaun in the Hood, y'all. Like, come on. Those movies exist to give balance to the heavy hitters. I would say that you need a little foolishness to appreciate the brilliance. So after all those years of movie tickets, streaming DVDs, scratching DVDs, streaming cues, here we are, me with a mic, you with earbuds, talking about stories that we grew up on. Why? Because conversation is the part that never gets old. Movies, they gave me language before I had experience. They taught me timing. They taught me tone. They taught me patience. I'd like to say they taught me the importance of silence, but nah, I'm not there yet. But I learned empathy from Will Smith. I learned courage from T'Challa, stubborn faith from Rocky, dry humor from every Chris Tucker movie ever made. Somewhere along the line, you realize that movies have gotten hijacked by hot takes. It's more about who becomes smarter, who sounds smarter, not who feels deeper. And that's why Not a Movie Buff exists, to bring that feel back. I want people to remember what it's like to walk out of a theater, arguing about the ending, but okay, cool, we disagree, we're going to Wings after still. To admit you were touched by something in the movie without worrying about getting roasted by it. To just say, yo, I like that. That was good, and mean it. That's the mission. To take back movie talk from the algorithms and give it back to people who actually watch with their hearts open, but with their popcorn ready, because we always here for some good snacks. Now, even now, as a grown man juggling work, marriage, everything in between, movies are still my sneak in lessons. I can always learn a good lesson from a movie. When I'm stuck creatively, we go on the Spider-Verse. And it reminds me that risk and color, they make things pop. When I need peace, I'm throwing on a goofy movie. Because sometimes you just need to laugh at something wholesome, something goofy all over again. It's the perfect therapy, I promise. But movies can also be considered time capsules. Like, you think you're just watching fiction, but years later, you look back and you realize you were watching yourself evolve. Now, when you think about it, that's wild. But it's also why I never get tired of pressing play. So here's the deal moving forward. Every single Thursday, new episodes are going to drop. Some of them will be deep dives. Some of them will be character studies, themes, symbolism, done my way. But some will be light, like reviews, reactions, whatever's buzzing that week. Some will be those special ones that mix both, where I talk about life through film. You're going to get reviews, not critic reviews, real reviews. Like when Zootopia 2 drops in November, you better believe that I'll be dropping my review that next week. I did write a review for the first movie on my previous site. I believe I gave it like a 9 out of 10. I love the first movie, so I have high hopes for Zootopia 2. They better come through for this. I'll still post a regular Thursday episode that week, but reviews will pop in as bonuses when big releases hit. We also going to be doing some seasonal vibes too. We're going to have a chill Thanksgiving episode you can play while cooking, a December holiday movie marathon special, and the season finale wrapping up the best and worst films of 2025. Now, I don't want this to just be me talking at you. I want it to feel like we're in a group chat about movies that actually matter. So if you're on Spotify, hit the Q&A under this episode. Tell me your go-to comfort movie or the one that made you rethink something. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, drop a short review. For everything else, behind the scenes clips, updates, bonus content, it's all in my link tree. You don't need to memorize any of my social handles. Just hit the link tree and you'll find all of my socials there. I want to start bringing in listener stories too. So if you would, just let me know about your movie memories. Let me know about your first theater experience, your worst date because of a bad film choice. Because those stories, they say honestly just as much about us as movies do. Now, I want to wrap with something that I've been thinking about since I started planning the show. When you're a kid, movies, they are an escape. And even as an adult still, but more so as an adult, they are a reflection. It is the same screen, but a different mirror. I look back at everything from Toy Story to Tenet, and I realized that movies taught me how to see life in layers. The loud ones, the wild ones, they all had something underneath. Rush Hour 2, it wasn't just jokes, it was friendship. Fast Five, it wasn't just cars, it was loyalty. The Dark Knight, that wasn't just chaos, it was choice. That's the stuff that I want to unpack here. How stories on screen, how they match the stories that we live. And maybe by the end of every episode, you'll walk away with a new reason to rewatch something you thought you knew. So that's it, y'all. That's episode 1. That's the pilot, the first step of what I hope becomes something long-term and worth your time. If you take one thing from this episode, it's that you don't have to be a buff to love movies. You don't need no fancy language, no frame analysis to appreciate good storytelling. Just be honest about what hits you. See, movies remind us where we've been, what we value, and what we still need to figure out. They help us laugh, they help us cry, or even just breathe for a couple of hours. That's enough reason for me to keep watching. So next Thursday, we're going to dive into when a bad movie teaches you something good. Because honestly, sometimes the biggest flops hold the best lessons. If you vibed with today's episode, share it with someone who loves movies the way you do. Follow the show. Hit that Spotify question and join the conversation. And I want to thank you all for hanging out with me for this first ride. If you don't remember anything else during your time with me, remember this one thing. I may not be a movie buff, but I'll see you at the movies.